The Hunger Games is an adaptation of the first book in a series of female-targeted young adult novels with a passionate online fanbase that has been eagerly anticipating the film for over a year now. So, I hope you'll all understand if I just take a moment to slip this helmet on, here we go, yeah, and get into this fire-retardant jumpsuit, yeah, alright, yeah, okay, and get behind this 20-inch bulletproof titanium vaulted door. Alright then, this movie is pretty mediocre when you get right down to it. It's not bad in the strictest sense, but for all the pomp and circumstance that's preceded its arrival to screens touting some sort of epic experience, it's a shockingly cheap-looking movie, with potentially interesting setups marred by sparse, ugly sets, overly familiar production design, way too much time spent in generic outdoor locations, obnoxious handheld cinematography, god-awful action scenes, and special effects of head-scratchingly low quality. Now, I've been critical of this film's marketing for a long time now for clearly betting the farm exclusively on fans of the book, since the trailers and posters gave almost zero indication of what the big deal was supposed to be, but now I can see what they were up against. Apart from a smattering of decent acting moments, I can't think of any reason why anyone should go to see this other than to see a book they like come to life. If not for some of the more recognizable actors, one could be forgiven for assuming that what they were watching was a mid-1990s Nickelodeon pilot instead of a feature film. So, to our story. Hum along if you know the words. In a devastated post-apocalyptic near future, a brutal police state operates a televised blood sport in which school-aged children are made to fight to the death in the wilderness in order to keep the masses cowed and obedient. Jennifer Lawrence is our main character, Katniss Everdeen. Seriously? We're gonna do the you can tell it's the future because half the characters have alien-sounding names even though everyone seems to just be speaking regular American English? Okay. So, Catfish Jellybean is a teenager living under a dictatorship which decades ago put down a citizens' revolt and now forces the denizens of the lower-class districts to volunteer up children as participants for an annual winner-take-all reality TV gladiator match called The Hunger Games. Presumably because the original title of, "Hey, I've got it, let's subject our would-be enemies to scheduled ritual humiliation that specifically encourages the youngest and therefore most likely to rebel to keep themselves in a constant state of trained readiness for lethal guerrilla combat and oh my god, we must be the stupidest evil empire that has ever existed games," was too long for the masthead. When Caltech Skinny Jean's younger sister is chosen as one of this year's contestants, she volunteers to trade places and is promptly whisked off to the capital for a walking tour of heavy-handed swipes at low-hanging fruit like reality TV, propaganda newscasts, conspicuous consumption, and class disparity. Will it surprise you to learn that the film opts to visualize the evils of its social caste system by making the bad guys decadent, campy, and foppish, while the good guys are all scrappy, working class, and quote-unquote normal looking? Didn't think so. She's also introduced to her fellow young contestants, plus an array of grown-up actors who've come looking for some of those tasty, multi-film Hogwarts faculty paychecks. Like Woody Harrelson as an ex-champion, Donald Sutherland as the president, Lenny Kravitz as a costumer, Stanley Tucci as Damon Killian, and Wes Bentley as an actor you forgot existed. The big hook to the games themselves is that participants are encouraged to play up their characters to goad fans watching at home to airdrop them care packages, so Crabgrass Barryween and her male district buddy pretend to be a couple in order to make their story more engaging. Haha, satire. Of course, if one of them actually did feel something, uh-oh. Okay, so I've already cracked the requisite number of jokes about how much of the setup has been lifted from other sources, but that in and of itself isn't an automatic deal-breaker. After all, a film can afford to utilize formula if it's willing to make it up in other areas. The Hunger Games movie isn't. Everything from its costumes to sets looks rated from the warehouses of older, better movies. The bad guys especially seem to have constructed their entire society from a prefab, build-your-own, generic fascist state kit. Even the supposedly outrageous fashion choices meant to suggest their debauched crapulence just look like the same trust us it's the future monstrosities everyone was wearing in The Fifth Element, and Demolition Man, and Tank Girl, Solar Babies, Prayer for the Roller Boys, Johnny Mnemonic, you get the idea. Now, obviously, the big draw of something like this is the edgy prospect of seeing kids and teenagers having to murder each other, but thanks to the PG-13 rating, the prospect of such is pretty muted. It's bloodier than you might expect, yeah, but sized against certain unavoidable comparisons, it plays about as brutal as a game of ultimate frisbee. And of course, almost all the nice and/or personality-deprived kids buy it off-screen, leaving behind a pack of one-dimensionally evil fighters it's okay for you to root for the good guys to kill. This is probably for the best, though, since the action scenes themselves are terrible, shaky cam nonsense with zero sense of continuity, choreography, or even composition. The film also does a terrible job of laying out how the actual games work. It mostly looks like they're in a giant domed enclosure containing an actual forest, but then later it seems like the bad guys can just generate natural disasters out of thin air, and even whip up a bunch of awful-looking CGI monsters for the incredibly anticlimactic finale. So wait, is the arena real? Are we in virtual reality? And if so, how are they eating the wild food and game they keep finding? For that matter, how are people betting on a game that can just change its rules and stakes at random? And if this is all artificial, why didn't they build a place to fight in that doesn't look like just some generic forest somewhere? I don't see this being as popular a TV show as they make it out to be. There are interesting ideas at play here, but most of them are barely explored in the actual movie. The good guys turning the inherent propaganda narrative of the games to their own end is a neat twist, but we don't see hardly any of the homefront reactions that would make it more palpable. I mean, yeah, there's some, but geez, this is where you put the payoff to the reality TV social satire stuff you spent the first hour of the movie bludgeoning us to death with. And it's not like there wasn't room for it. This movie is a slow, long 2.5 hours, and like half of Act 2 is just endlessly repeating scenes of Catskill and Maybelline running, crawling, climbing, jumping, and running some more through the same damn forest over and over and over and over. Look, I know a lot of people were looking forward to this, and I really hate to come down on a movie that's at least trying to explore some big ideas, and features a lead character who's at least theoretically a much more interesting and role model-worthy female hero than some others I could mention, but unfortunately, the actual film is just kinda cheap, generic, and weirdly lifeless. And that's really too bad.
Okay, so the reason this is in the middle instead of at the end, as is often the case on the re-uploads or the reconsiderations of the older episodes or older reviews, is I honestly, looking back, thought that I had recorded episodes for the two Mockingjay movies. That turned out to be a fuzzy memory on my part. Those actually came out towards the end of, in between the end of Original Escape to the Movies and the beginning of doing reviews again on my own channel and Geek.com, where at which point there was more of a pick and choose of what was going to get reviewed on video, what was going to get reviewed in text, or just what I didn't want to review. And those ones just didn't come up. So I think I typed up reviews for the two Mockingjay movies at that point, but those appear to be lost to history. What are you going to do? Either way, I didn't care for those. I didn't care for these, but I wanted to do hey, I'll just put all of the Hunger Games reviews together, because the new one's coming out. That didn't happen because aren't all of them to put together, so I just thought I'd put the two of them out and sandwich this little recap in the middle just about that. Looking back, I don't have much of a mind to change about these. The only joke that I would have thought of even putting in a note about or clipping, because it feels like it was in bad taste now, is there's a gag in the first video for Hunger Games 1 about people forgetting that Wes Bentley existed, which was not a super great joke at the time. Me at least, wasn't super aware that Wes Bentley had actually fallen on some really hard times immediately leading up to doing the first Hunger Games movie, and was just kind of pulling himself out of that, and that this was the first step on kind of climbing back to working regularly again. Now he's on Yellowstone. He's very good on that. Good for him, because not every young actor who breaks big very early and then hits a rough patch gets to have that opportunity, so, good on him. Normally, that's the kind of thing I would pull out. I don't want to be pulling stuff out just because having it retroactively makes me look better. So yeah, that's something that I would have done different, and it would break the flow up of the joke and make that whole reading feel awkward. Similarly, there's no mention of Philip Seymour Hoffman having passed in the next one, because he would not have passed yet. I still don't really care for these movies. My opinion of them hasn't changed, is the bottom line. I don't think they were very good. I think that they mostly got built up because they were well-meaning and because they were presented as the most well-intentioned alternative to how dreary the rest of the YA dystopia glut was, and how everyone was seemingly glad to be rid of Twilight at the time. The new one I also didn't think was very good. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, that also got a, thumbs down from me, for lack of a better word. And I always feel a little bit bad about disliking these, because they're also disliked very intently by very shitty people for much shittier reasons. I just never thought they were particularly well made, particularly interesting, and the positive stuff that they do have to say, in my opinion, generally gets marred by this, very trite aesthetic populism, which is at best shallow and at worst ugly. I'm not confused about why we're trying to make it happen again. It's right on the nostalgia cycle to try and make it happen again. But since it has been a while and the new one just came out, if you were curious about what was a critic who was not really into the Hunger Games the last time, not really into the new one feeling in the interim, this is some preservation of that. So now stay tuned for remastered version of the Catching Fire review. For whatever reason, the remaster of the Catching Fire video actually came through at a much better bitrate than the remaster of the original Hunger Games review. Internet video quality is a fantastical mystery, basically.
I understand basically everything about the popularity and ubiquity of the Hunger Games, except that people think it's good. I get that Jennifer Lawrence is a real deal long-term movie star blossoming right before our eyes. I know that we're psyched to see kids and teenagers getting into a big multimedia franchise that's all about economic disparity and class struggle. And yes, I get that Catholic Fancy Feast is a way better projected self-image for young women than Bella Swan. Agreed, all of the above agreed. But we all saw that cheesy, incomprehensible, TV movie-level slog that was the first movie, right? Well, in case you've forgotten, this is our premise. At some point in the near future, or maybe an alternate timeline, it's kind of unclear, civilization is divided between the rich and poor classes who've elected to organize themselves into the laziest possible visual references for rich and poor classes. The evil capital, which fashions itself after Caligula's Rome, and the good districts, which fashion themselves after Depression-era working-class stereotypes. In order to suppress rebellion, the capital forces the districts to offer up dual-child tributes to participate in a yearly winner-take-all televised blood sport called the Hunger Games. The The Hunger Games are only supposed to have one winner, ensuring that every district loses at least one kid no matter who wins, but in our first movie, capitalist Ben Vereen and her platonic male buddy Pooter Melmac pretend to be a couple in order to sway the capital audience into showing them both mercy, a scheme complicated by Cuttlefish already having a boyfriend back home and Pizza actually having a for-real crush on her. As Catching Fire opens, the duo are on their whirlwind stage-managed victory tour as the capital's newest pet celebrities, but it becomes clear that many citizens of the district saw right through the pretend romance and have begun to venerate Cutlass Halloween as an icon of subterfuge and revolution. In response, the capital's new game maker, Pluto Nash, contrives that the next Hunger Games will be an all-stars match with a pool of combatants culled from former winners, meaning that Codfish and Pea Soup will have to go back into the grinder against seasoned veterans. And you know what? That all adds up to a pretty damn effective checklist of ways to fix what was wrong with the first movie. The victory tour is a much more direct and organic way to engage the satire of reality TV celebrity distraction culture. They've got a new director who actually knows how to do action and use a tripod, but best of all, having most of the other combatants be experienced fighters and mostly older folks who've all had time to hone interesting individual personalities and skills is a perfect stakes raising from just having Catspaw versus a bunch of anonymous shabby ragamuffins last time. I mean, check out this lineup. You got an aggro brother-sister team, you got two goth kids who do camouflage, you got a chick who files her teeth into fangs so she can bite people to death, you got an old woman who rides around on the back of a kinda sleazy young dude who has a goddamn trident, you got Jeffrey Wright as a smart-ass tech genius guy who kills people with science, you even got Jenna Malone as the evil Riot Girl version of Catalyst who fights with an axe because she's from the Lumberjack tribe or something. I mean, holy crap, yeah, it kinda means we're doing the first movie again, right down to the magic dresses pageant and the chariots and the training and all that business, but who cares? We've got all these badass new characters, Francis Lawrence is gonna at least make it look cool as hell, so hell yeah, let's get this mother going. Nah, just kidding. Once they get to the Hunger Games, they do a little bit of fighting, they run from some magic acid fog, they run from some killer monkeys, they run from some magic mess-with-your-head birds, but for the most part, Catapult and her improv team of allies spend most of the games hiding, while all those potentially fun new characters get killed off-screen. No, seriously. I mean, they change it up. First they're hiding in the woods, then they're hiding on a beach, then they're hiding in a different part of the woods, but it really is just a lot of sitting around and marking time until it can all end abruptly in a brand new all-time champion anti-climax, so we can get a cheeky lead-in for To Be Continued. I don't know, guys. I know I'm supposed to like these movies, and they aren't fully bad, and I really want to like these movies, but we're halfway through now, and I'm just not feeling it. I like the cast, I like the basic ideas behind it all, but this is two swings and a miss as far as I'm concerned. More problematically, all the interesting stuff it does make me think about is generally to the franchise's greater detriment. I'm still not getting how the capital can generate weather, biological matter, up to and including animals, and whole ecosystems artificially at the push of the button for the games, but for some reason need to keep everyone in the districts around as a free labor force. It's kind of odd how Catarax is still set up as this supremely badass heroine when she spends most of the first hour of this movie fainting and sobbing and breaking down mid-action so much you half expect Adam Malkovich to show up and go, okay, fine, you can use the bow now, Merida. And here's the other weird thing. I get that our big overarching class metaphor here is ancient Rome feeding Christians to lions in the Colosseum, but it's kind of odd that the good guys are all these steely, impossibly noble, good old-fashioned, salt-of-the-earth normal folks associated with traditional blue-collar, honest days work professions like farming and mining and hunting, while the main signifier that the capital folks are evil is that they're all fey and foppish and overdressed or overly fashion conscious, and even the men wear makeup, ew. Like there's one bad guy who's actually a good guy, and you know who it is because he's the guy wearing the least makeup out of all the bad guys. I'm not saying there's some kind of anti-this or anti-that message purposefully coded into Hunger Games. That would be kind of stupid given its broader textual and subtextual intentions, but that's kind of why this bit of discourse sticks out, and it's why you need to actually think through the use of visual shorthand when you're aiming for metaphor. The series' big thematic metaphor is all about class struggle and wealth disparity and all the other last shall be first occupy type stuff, but its visual metaphors often land on the exact opposite side, to the extent that from certain vantage points it can feel like we're supposed to be rooting for Sailor Scout Ted Nugent here to lead an armed incursion against San Francisco. Or maybe that's just my mind wandering. I mean, I had plenty of time for it, they really do just seem to be sitting around waiting for Act 3 forever.